Walk me through how you would conduct an AI impact assessment. If you're interviewing for an AI governance role, a responsible AI role, or even policy role, this question can determine whether you sound job ready or that you just studied the framework. Now, a weak answer could sound like this: I would check for bias and make sure the system is fair. Well, that is not enough. A stronger answer has structure. And here's a structure that I want you to remember: it is system, stakeholders, severity, and safeguards. That is the 4S of AI impact assessments. First, you understand the system. Second, you identify the stakeholders. Third, you evaluate the severity of the potential harms. And fourth, you recommend safeguards. And there's one more thing that candidates forget: you don't conduct an AI impact assessment alone. You have to work with product owners, work with data scientists, legal, compliance, security, and domain experts. So in this video, I will show you how to walk through an AI impact assessment in a way that sounds practical, cross-functional, and interview ready. And by the end, I'll also give you resume language that you can use after you practice this one yourself. So let's start. Interviewers will ask this question because they are testing the way you think and not just whether you know what an AI impact assessment is. But let me define what it is just in case. An AI impact assessment is a structured review of how an AI system could impact people before it is deployed. It looks at what the system does, who it affects, and what harms could occur. It also looks at the severity of those harms and whether there are safeguards in place. Now, can you take a real AI system, understand what it does, identify who may be affected, surface those risks, as well as communicate with the right people, recommending the safeguards that should be in place before the system is deployed? Now, that's the job. This is also why AI impact assessments are showing up across AI governance. So AI impact assessment is becoming a practical governance activity. So in an interview, you want to show that you understand both sides. You understand the frameworks, but you also can apply them inside an organization. So let's walk through the 4S method. The first S is a system. Before you assess impact, you need to understand what the system actually does. So in an interview, I would say something like this: I would start by clarifying the system's purpose, the decision that it supports, the data it uses, and whether the AI is advisory with a human in the loop or whether it is completely autonomous. In AI governance, context changes everything. For example, a chatbot for answering product questions is very different from an AI system used in loan approvals and in hiring decisions, or even in emergency room triage. So it's the same technology category, but it has different impacts. It has different risk profiles as well as the safeguards, which are different. The second S is stakeholders. Once you understand the system, then you start to ask, well, who is affected? I like to think about stakeholders in three rings. The inner ring is the direct users, the people interacting with the system day to day. The middle ring is the people that the system makes decisions about. They may never see the system, but the algorithm affects their lives. The outer ring is a broader group that's affected downstream. They are the customers, patients, employees, the community, or even the public. Most people only think about the user, but the user is not always the person most affected by the system. For example, in an AI hiring system, the recruiter may be the user, but the applicant is a person whose opportunity may be affected. So that is a kind of distinction that interviewers want to hear. The third S is severity. This is where you identify and prioritize harm. I would organize harms in a few categories: fairness risk, that's one; safety and well-being risk, that's two; transparency and appeal risk; and then finally, privacy and data risk. Then I would evaluate two things: how likely is the harm and how severe would the impact be? The point here is to identify the risks that matter most for that system. Now, you don't need to treat every risk equally. A low likelihood but a catastrophic harm may deserve more of your attention than something that is highly likely to occur, but it just has a small inconvenience to the person affected. That is what makes this a governance judgment. It's not a checklist. The fourth S is safeguards. This is where you show that you are not just identifying the problems, helping the organization manage them, and the safeguards should be proportionate to the level of risk. So here, I would recommend safeguards in three categories: technical safeguards like bias testing, validation, monitoring, and performance testing across groups. Second safeguard is procedural safeguards like human review, escalation paths, documentation appeals, and approval gates. And then we have organizational safeguards like clear accountability, governance reviews, incidents reporting, audit trails, and ownership. And I would always mention monitoring. An AI impact assessment should not end at the launch of the product. As you know, risk will always change. Risks change when the system meets real people, real data, and real organizational pressure. So the 4S method is your system, your stakeholders, severity, and safeguards. Now, let me show you how this sounds in an interview. So imagine the interviewer says to you, we are deploying an AI system that triages patient safety in an emergency department. Walk me through how you would assess its impact. And this is how I would answer. I would approach the assessment in 4 steps: understanding the system, mapping the stakeholders, evaluating the severity of potential harms, and recommending safeguards. I'll also make sure that this is done in a cross-functional way, because an AI impact assessment should not be completed by the governance team in isolation. Then I will start with the system. I would clarify whether the system is advisory or whether it can directly influence triage decisions. Now, this becomes important because the more authority that the system has, the stronger the oversight needs to be. Then I will bring in collaboration. In a real assessment, I wouldn't treat this as a governance only exercise. I would treat it as a structured conversation between governance, operations, data science, legal, and patient safety. To understand this properly, I would speak with the clinical team or the product team or the system owner. The clinicians will help explain the real triage workflow. But you also need evidence. So I would review the system documentation, any model cards that exist, any training data summary, and any prior risks that have been identified. Then I would move to the stakeholder stage. This is where I would identify 3 stakeholder groups. The direct users are the emergency department clinicians who interact with the system. The affected individuals are the patients whose urgency levels may be influenced by the system, and the broader stakeholders, including the hospital itself and the community served by that hospital. Then I would point out the key governance insights. Patients may never see the AI system, but they are the people most affected by it. Now, this is a stronger interview sentence. Next, I would evaluate severity. The most serious harm that I would assess is misclassification of patient severity. If the system under triages a patient who needs immediate care, that would create a direct safety risk. Then I would connect it to fairness. I would also assess whether the system performs differently across demographic groups. You have to know who to involve, what evidence to request from them, and what decisions each group helps inform. Then I would prioritize the risk. I would likely rate under triage or clinical patients as high severity because the consequence could be serious. Then I would move to safeguards. For technical safeguards, I would recommend validation before deployment. For procedural safeguards, I will keep the system advisory rather than fully autonomous. A clinician should make the final triage decision, especially in high stakes cases. For organizational safeguards, I would assign a clear system owner and also require periodic governance reviews, and then create a mechanism for clinicians to flag any questionable recommendation. Then I would close the interview answer with the business and governance outcome. By doing this, the organization can show that it has assessed the system before deployment, involve the right stakeholders, review the right evidence, and identify the most serious risks, as well as implemented a proportionate safeguard that reduce any safety risks. Now, this is the stronger answer. Notice here that I didn't just say I would check for bias. This is what makes the answer sound job ready. And here is how you can practice this after this video. Pick one AI system that you understand very well. It could be a chatbot, it could be a hiring tool. Then create 4 headers: system, stakeholder, severity, and safeguards. Then add one more section to it. Who would I involve? In that section, list the teams or the people you would communicate with, what you would need from them, and what part of the assessment they help inform. That final section will make your practice case much stronger because it shows that you understand how governance actually works inside organizations. Now, once you've done this for 2 or 3 systems, you can speak about it in interviews. You can say something like, I've practiced AI impact assessment across multiple use cases by identifying affected stakeholders, evaluating potential harms, recommending safeguards, and mapping cross-functional teams needed for review. And on your resume, you could even write completed AI impact assessment case studies across multiple AI cases, identifying affected stakeholders, risk severity, required evidence, cross-functional review needs, and proportionate safeguards. That sounds much stronger than saying interested in responsible AI. One sounds like interest and the other one sounds like capability. Now, remember the 4S method. It's a system, stakeholder, severity, and safeguards. And remember, impact assessments are cross-functional work. Now, drop a comment and tell me which system you are going to assess. If you want to jumpstart your AI governance career, watch my 10-day AI governance challenge video. If you want more practical videos like this, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.